Welcome to COB channel. Today we're going to talk about cost estimation. Cost estimation is used to forecast or rather estimate the next cost in the future or the next period given with the following data. Now first, before we move on to the cost estimation, let's first identify or rather define the following terms needed in order to better understand cost estimation. Now, cost behavior is the term used to describe whether cost changes when the level of output changes. Now, there are three cost behaviors: fixed cost, variable cost, and mixed cost. Now, for fixed cost, it remains constant even if the output changes, and it doesn't change relatively even if you have produced so many. But it should be taken note that the fixed cost will not change if the output production remains within the relevant range. Now the variable cost is a cost that changes relatively with the output changes. It just follows the behavior of the output changes. So if the output production increases, the variable cost will increase as well. Now for the mixed cost, it has a component of fixed cost and a variable cost, which will be discussed thoroughly in the succeeding discussion. Now the activity drivers explain changes in activity cost by measuring changes in activity output. Now we have here the unit level drivers and the non-unit level drivers. Unit level drivers explain changes in cost as units produce change, while the non-unit level drivers explain how cost changes or change as factors other than the number of unit produced changes. Now next is the relevant range. Relevant range is the range over which the assumed cost relationship is valid for the normal operations of a firm. It is the range of activity in which there is a relationship between total cost and the level of activity. Simply put, if the cost behavior patterns change, which is and it reaches outside the relevant range, then it will cause the cost to become non-linear, or rather, for example, if the output production reaches outside the relevant range, then the fixed cost, which we know that it remains constant, will change as well. And it can be understood by the picture will be shown next. So this is the relevant range. Now next is the determination of cost behavior. In this slide or in this discussion, we will present you ways on how cost behavior is estimated. Now there are more than three cost behavior. So first, let's go to the industrial engineering method. It estimates cost functions by analyzing the relationship between inputs and outputs in physical terms. It is also called the work measurement method and is a forward-looking method of determining through physical observation and analysis just what activities in what amounts and are needed to complete a process. It estimates cost functions by analyzing the relationship between inputs and outputs in physical terms. It is a very thorough, detailed way to estimate a cost function when there is a physical relationship between inputs and outputs, but it can be time-consuming. The advantage of industrial engineering method is that it can be applied to new processes and designs. However, the disadvantage is that it is less useful in services where different customers or circumstances may require varying amounts of time and types of service. Second is the account analysis method. It can be used to estimate costs by classifying the accounts in the general ledger as fixed, variable, or mixed. To use this method, the accountant uses judgment and experience to separate the accounts into categories, fixed and variable. It also estimates cost functions by classifying various cost accounts as variable, fixed, or mixed with respect to the identified level of activity. Now the third one is the high-low method. It uses only the highest and lowest observed values of the cost driver within the relevant range and respective cost to estimate the slope coefficient and the constant of the cost function. Simply put, we only consider the highest values and the lowest values in this method. Now the formula is presented here. y is equals to a plus bx. It is similar to the regression equation where b is the slope, the difference between high versus low cost over the difference between high versus low cost driver. So just remember that the y is equals to total cost and the a is equals to constant or the fixed cost. In other words, b is the slope or the variable rate per unit and the x is the cost driver or the number of outputs. Next is the how to get the constant. Now to get the constant or the fixed cost, we just get the difference between the cost of the lowest cost less the variable rate calculated through slope times the cost number of cost driver which is of the lowest value. Now to better understand this, let's first give you an illustration. Now Lori Daly is examining the customer service cost of Capital Products. Capital Products has more than 200 separate electrical products that are sold within a 6-month guarantee of full repair or replacement with a new product. When a product is returned by a customer, a service report is prepared. Now, weekly data are as follows. So we have here the weeks, 8 weeks, and the customer service department costs, and the number of service reports. Now we are asked to calculate the cost for week 9. And let's do this, step by step. Now the solution for the problem will be presented as follows. This will be a step-by-step process. So first, calculation of variable rate. As we know, the variable rate or letter B is similar to the slope, which is rise over run. So the 455 is the highest number of reports that is stated in the problem. So when you say the highest point or the lowest point, we're going to base it from the x or from the number of reports, not on the amount. So 455 is the highest point or the highest reports, and its corresponding total cost is 21,500, and 115 the lowest point or lowest number of reports, and its corresponding total cost of 13,000. And get the difference and divide, and we'll get the slope or the variable rate of $25 rather. So second is the calculation of fixed cost. As we discussed earlier, the fixed cost or the constant is calculated as the lowest dollar amount of the lowest x value minus the variable rate that we have calculated times the x value or the lowest x value, and get the difference, and we'll get a fixed cost of $10,125. Now next, third is the form the equation. So this is presented here is the equation. So total cost is equals to 25x plus a fixed cost of 10,125. And we can substitute already, since we have already the equation, we can substitute the week 9 number of reports to the equation, and we'll get a total cost for week 9 of 15,725, calculated as shown here. And that is how the high-low method is used or presented using this illustration. Now after the illustration, we have here the advantages and disadvantages. Now the disadvantages is that first, it is subjective, second, it is simple to calculate, and third, it is easy to understand as it gives a quick initial insight into how the cost driver affects other costs. Now the disadvantages, first, the high or low points can be what are known as outliers, representing atypical cost-activity relationships. Now, what do we mean by outliers? These outliers are the data points or data that is not that that is not in the normal activity relationships. In other words, it happened or the data outliers happened within the outside of the normal activity. So that's why they may be considered abnormal and may not be a clearly representative of the other costs or the relationships. Now second, even if these points are not outliers, other pairs of points may clearly be more representative, which is the disadvantage of high-low method because it ignores the other points or other data. Now next is the scatterplot method. Scatterplot method is the selecting two points that appear to be representative of the general cause activity pattern. Now in the scatterplot method we use the graphing paper. Now we're going to plot the data in the y-axis and the x-axis and we draw a line. Any points that is touched by the line will be or may be used to estimate the cost. And the similar in the estimation is similar to the high-low method, but the points that we're talking about here is not the high or low method, but those points that is touched by the line that we have drawn. Now to understand this better, we have here the steps in scatterplot method. First, plot the data points in the scatter graph. What do I mean by scatter graph? Scatter graph is just the graphing paper, and we're going to plot the data points in the first quadrant, which is everything is positive for y and the x-axis. Now, one purpose of the scatter graph is to assess the validity of the assumed linear relationship. It can provide insight concerning the relationship between cost and output by allowing one to visually fit a line to the points in the scatter graph. Next is to draw a line into the scatter graph, just like what we have discussed. And the third, any points that are touched by the line may be used to estimate or to calculate the total fixed cost, or rather total cost. Because in the scatter plot we have also a similar procedure, just like in high-low method, y is equals to a plus bx, and we get the slope and the total fixed cost, and we'll get also the total cost. So which is relatively the same procedure, but the difference between the high-low method and the scatterplot method is the data points that are used in calculating the slope and the total fixed cost. No illustration will be presented here in the scatterplot method since it is just similar with the high-low method. Now the disadvantage and the advantage of the scatterplot method are presented here. Now the advantages of scatterplot method is that it allows the analysis to inspect the data visually because the data points are presented in the graph or scatter graph, which the analyst can be seen. Also the trend, also in the scatter graph, you can observe also the trend or behavior of the data points. Now the disadvantage is that scatterplot is somewhat subjectivity because you just draw a line and any points that are touched by the line may be used, which is not, and it also ignores the other data points just like in high-low method. So it is somewhat subjective in selecting data points. Also, in addition to that, this method, the scatterplot method, suffers from the lack of any objective criterion for choosing the best fitting line. Now, the last method is the regression method. It is a statistical method that measures the average amount of change in the dependent variable associated with a unit change in one or more independent variables, and is considered as the more accurate and preferable than the high-low method because the regression equation cost using information from all observations is totally used. Now here presented is the same formula, but it is different in the regression method because in the regression method we use different words or different terms. Now for the total cost, it is a dependent variable. A is the constant, B is the coefficient of the independent variable, and X is equal to independent variable. Now A is the constant. Constant means it's just a fixed cost. Now letter B, it is just a variable rate. We just presented you here the statistical terms in order for you to better understand the regression method. And now let's illustrate this for you to better understand this using the same example. you may screenshot this so that you won't have any trouble following up or catching up as we answer this illustration. Now in this method, in the regression method, we're not going to calculate using the formulas in the regression, but rather we're going to teach you how to use a calculator in the calculation of the regression. So our lives will be easy since the calculator can calculate for us the regression values we need, like A and B. So we're going to teach you the step-by-step method of regression method. So the first step is press mode for the button. So it is pointed here using the red arrow and the red circle. Then after that, the screen will display a number of functions. Then press 3 for stat. Then after pressing the 3 for stat, then the screen will display a number of formulas. So press 2, or rather choose the function or equation that says a plus bx. Then after clicking that, you'll get to put the x values and the y values. So remember, the y values are the amount and the x values are the number of reports. So do keep that in mind, because if you interchange the values, then you'll get the wrong answer. Then after that, after inputting all values in the given, so refer to the illustration earlier, so input all those given in the calculator. Then after that, we're going to press AC. So after inputting, so make sure that you have inputted all values, x and y values. Then after that, press AC. Then after that, press shift in the violet, then 1. Then after that, choose 5 for the regression. In the screen, you'll see that. So choose 5 for the regression, then choose 1 to get the to get the fixed cost. So let's first get the fixed cost. So choose 1 for the A, and you'll get a fixed cost of 10,292.06614. So that should be your answer, or that should be shown in your calculator when you do this. Then after that, we're going to repeat the process again in order to get the variable rate, or letter B. So press AC again, then shift, then 1, then choose 5 for regression, then choose 2 to get the B, or the variable rate, and the variable rate should be in this calculate should be 24.55703,883 in your calculator. So that is how the regression works. So I hope you'll learn a lot about using this calculator, because this calculator really helps a lot in the regression calculation. So with that, we already have the A and B values. We can already form the equation. So the equation is y's total cost is equals to 24.557x plus 10,292. So that is the fixed cost. And we'll just substitute the number of reports for week 9, and we'll get an estimated total cost for week 9 of 15,792.768. So that is the results for the regression. I hope you learn a lot about these things, especially the cost estimation. With that, that concludes for our episode today about cost estimation. I hope you learn a lot about this cost estimation, especially how to use the calculator. So if you have any questions regarding how to use the calculator, or how cost estimation is, then feel free to ask those things in the comment section below. So don't forget to subscribe to the COB channel, and bye. See you on our next episodes.